Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamericamedia.com. This is the program that shows you how to turn your problems into solutions and your obstacles into opportunities and make your dreams come true. This program has been on the air on Voice America Media for 24 years. I've done many other programs on many other networks, but I've stayed with this one all that time. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you. Today, we're talking about the book Healing with Wonder: How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. And I think in these times, we can all use awe and wonder in our life. My guest today is Val Walker. Val Walker's profound journey through trauma and spiritual exploration is both heart-wrenching and inspiring. Her book beautifully captures the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of connection and of awe as well. Okay. Welcome, Val.
It's so good to be here.
Good. I'm so glad we can talk about this, about resilience and a sense of wonder and hope and connection. I think we all need it, no matter what our situation is. So, what inspired you to write this book?
It's a amazingly long story, but it started with one moment way back in the late 1970s. I was a very young woman in my early 20s, and I was in a suicidal state of mind, escaping domestic violence from my first partner. And to make a very long story short, as a homeless and trauma-driven woman running from domestic violence, I also lost my grandmother, who was deeply a major part of my soul. She was my main person in my life. She died at the same time. So I was in a very
Mm,
dark, suicidal state of mind. And I wanted to end my life because the perpetrator chasing me, I couldn't get rid of. I couldn't find protection. My one beloved person in my life had died, and I I was hopeless. I was 22 years old and sitting by a river in a campground. I was trying to swallow a bottle of Valium, and amazingly, a great blue heron flew out of the sky and landed very near me, not even 10 feet away, just stared at me. And I was trying to start swallowing the Valium. I wanted to end it all. I was in such like tunnel vision,
mm,
wanting that death wish to end everything and escape from all the misery I was in. But this bird just stared into my soul, like just
mm.
fascinating. And it stopped me from swallowing those pills. It stopped my
Isn't that
whole
amazing?
ruminating. And that bird, that amazing moment with that heron, turned my whole life around. And it all boils down to a moment of awe and wonder that lifted me out of my major rumination and brain. It just lifted me out of that. And I saw suddenly all this beauty and majesty of life around me. And I realized I did want to live. And I actually thanked my grandmother in spirit for maybe, this bird somehow connected. I just felt one with everything,
Yeah,
Patricia.
yeah.
So that was the moment that proved to me my sense of wonder and awe could be life-saving. But I went through many, many decades, Patricia, until I realized that moment that turned my life around, the science finally came.
Mm,
I mean, not till my 60s
yeah.
that did I realize that neuroscience showed that moments like that of awe and wonder maybe a miracle, maybe just something amazing that just takes your breath away and changes your whole perspective on life.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, those kinds of moments are enormously healing for trauma survivors, grief survivors. So thank
Mhm.
you for hearing my big opening story on that.
Well, but there are a couple things. One, you recognized it. Not everybody would. You know that. Not everybody would. People would sit there and go, "What's this bird doing here?" Right?
Yeah,
So that is an amazing transformative moment that I'm sure led you to do what you do now, which is rehabilitation counseling. Right. And I did not read your bio, which I want to share now, having said that story. You are a contributing blogger for Psychology Today and Health Story Collaborative. You're the author of The Art of Comforting, which was a Nautilus Book Award Gold winner that was later recommended by the Boston Public Health Commission as a guide for families impacted by the Boston Marathon bombing. This is amazing. You also authored 400 Friends and No One to Call, and I interviewed you on that book years ago. And you speak nationwide on building community and support after loss and major life changes. And your background is in rehabilitation counseling, grief support, and consulting with a Master of Science degree in rehabilitation counseling. So, what's important here, what I want to get across, is that one incident led you to all of this
it
because you
sure
probably
did.
wouldn't be doing this, but also, Val, it's paying attention, right? It's
I
you
know.
got the message. It was there for you and you got it and you allowed it to change your life. And I will say this. I think if there's one thing I'd like people to get from this interview, it's start paying attention to those messages that may come from nowhere that we really don't think are something, but they really, really are. That's what I would say. I've had those moments in my life. Not that, but I've had those like amazing, like, how did this just happen? This couldn't have happened. It's too much of a coincidence.
Hmm.
And then I went, oh, I'm being guided.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. And I think it's really beautiful because in you recognizing that moment, now you're able to help thousands of people.
Yeah. But that state of openness that allows us to have awe and wonder, that ability to just lift ourselves out of the ruminating, the brain. I want to bring a tad of neuroscience in here
Please
because
do.
thank goodness people like Dr. Kiltner, a great writer and researcher on wonder, I give a shout out for him. And I quote him a lot in my book, and many other researchers who studied states of awe and wonder, like moments I had with that heron. What happens to our brain when that type of experience happens? Their finding is enormously healing for trauma and
Mhm.
grief. So let me just tell you a couple of things neuroscience has proven really solidly. One is usually we're functioning in what is known as the default mode network of our brain.
Mhm.
And that's the part of us that's thinking about ourselves, like how to survive, what do I have to do next? And it can also get into serious rumination at times, nagging
Mhm.
thoughts. It's when we're
Mhm.
all caught up in our thoughts about how we're supposed to get by each moment. But
Mhm.
also, the default mode network has this other component, neuroscience says, called predictive coding. How do you like that? Predictive coding. So we're
Mhm.
anticipating, we're expecting things to happen. Our brains are saying, well, if this happens, then that's going to happen. So we get ourselves really, really focused on sequential thinking like that. So we expect certain things to happen. Well, guess
Mhm.
what happens when an amazing moment of awe takes your breath away? Guess what? It lifts you out of it deactivates that whole default mode network and deactivates that predictive coding. So suddenly you're in the moment. Okay, Patricia, you're not trying
Mm,
to go, what's going to happen next?
mm,
You're going, oh my gosh, look what's right here in front of me. And you
right.
get out of your ego, you get out of your thoughts, you get out of all that self-referential thinking, and you're like just in the moment and you're really tuned in. And it's beyond you and your ego and whatever you think is
Right.
supposed to happen.
So,
So a
Chris,
moment of awe, neuroscience shows, takes us into the present moment in a very acute and really amazing way that our brain opens up.
so it's mindfulness. It's being mindful of
It's
very,
like
very
acute.
present.
It's very acute and it's
Yeah,
very instantaneous and it's very natural.
right. And so we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about how we can help ourselves to recognize these kinds of moments because, as you said, they're very healing. And if we can train ourselves by whatever it is, whether it's meditation or whether it's breathing or it's walking in nature or whatever it is that, and I'd love you to talk about this, is what can we do so that when those moments happen, we really get them and we really see them because they're there for us. But, it's like we all say, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's not what happens, it's how you perceive it. So I think in our next segment, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how can we be more intentional in living so that when those moments happen, we really, really see them. I think that would be terrific. And we have a couple of minutes. I'm going to share something very quick that happened for me. It's dramatic in a different way. It was not quite as life altering, but it really showed me that I was being guided. And I'll try to do this in 30 seconds. It happened many years ago, and I was finishing a documentary on positive aging 25 years ago. And the person I had in the studio walked out of the studio angry. And I went into the office thinking, great, how am I going to finish this documentary? And the office had an envelope for me. I was only there once a month, so the chances of me even getting it at that moment were very sparse. And I opened up the envelope, and there was a press release about a 102-year-old golfer who lived in the same town that I was filming that was winning an award. And I went, what? I called him and he finished the documentary. How does that happen? How does that happen? It was such life altering for me because it was as though I needed something badly and this was handed to me, literally. So I think, and I was in awe over that, as you say. I was just like, how did that happen? So I love that you're talking about this, and I think in our next segment, I'd love you to talk more about how we can develop this in our
Yeah.
life so we'll sense those moments. So let's talk about my guest again. Hold on a minute. I had all of your wonderful bio, but tell us the name of your book.
Healing through wonder, how all restores us after trauma and loss.
Yeah, which is which is so important. So important. All right, everybody. We're going to come back and we'll be talking to Val Walker about her book. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamericamedia.com. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and we are back. We are talking with Val Walker about her wonderful book, which is called Healing Through Wonder: How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. Right. And what we're going to talk about is the sense of wonder, because it's a source of resilience, hope, and connection, especially for people who have faced trauma and grief. And as Val talked about in the first segment with neuroscience research on the benefits of awe and wonder, so that it's really grounded in science, and with inspiring profiles, we're really encouraged to spark our sense of wonder and really pay attention to those experiences in life. So, welcome back, Val. So, let's talk about how you can develop that sense of wonder so when it happens, you recognize it.
Well, let's say you're busy working on something or you're really worried about something. Your brain is churning. And lo and behold, I love that word behold, there's this bird that alights upon a limb near your window. And it's a cardinal. Oh my goodness. And you're suddenly drawn to the cardinal and the cardinal message or the cardinal language or whatever that cardinal is doing. And everything suddenly you're not worried anymore. You're not caught up anymore. And even 30 seconds of a moment of connecting with a bird or something that takes your breath away and pulls you out of your thoughts, that is enough to reset your brain and alter your mood and your outlook for the rest of the day, if not maybe something more. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to say, Patricia, that even in a few seconds, a
Mhm.
moment of awe can shift everything.
Right,
And you don't need big life-changing experiences with such as what I had back when I was suicidal, but just
right,
regular everyday little moments. Look for the moments that take your breath away and
right.
stay open to them. In fact, you can keep a little log. You know,
That's a
you
very
can
good idea.
track your little, I call them sparks, little moments that stopped you, in your track, and you were able to notice and come connected with something bigger than yourself, greater
Yeah.
than yourself. Would you like to know 6 parts of an awe experience according to the awe experience scale?
Yes. Go ahead.
Neuroscience has studied this very intensely over the last 10 years. And there's 6 major elements of an awe moment that, if you like, you can call it legitimizes your experience, but maybe even 3 or 4 of those of the 6 will validate that you had an awe experience, and that will change your brain, change your whole outlook. So let's start with the first aspect of awe is a moment of vastness, like something that just kind of basically, if you're sitting by water or sitting by sky or having a moment in nature or listening to music that is unusually kind of vast for you, kind of opens you up. So vastness and opening up is one aspect of an awe moment. It's like a sense of timelessness,
Mm,
which the second is an altered sense of time. You stop thinking about time and you become part of something eternal that seems like it'll last forever, has no time to it. So the vastness and the timelessness or the altered time are enormous parts of an awe moment. Lifts you
mhm,
out of that crunch of time. It makes you feel like, oh, this could last forever. This is a
mm,
moment that stays with me forever. Another aspect is a sense of oneness with everything. We don't feel separate from it. We just feel connected. Like when you see that cardinal, you're not thinking of you anymore. You're with that cardinal. You blend in somehow. Another aspect of an awe moment is a sense of what's called the small self, according to neuroscience, where everything seems so much bigger than you. There's this huge, wide universe. You're just this small part of something so much bigger. And there's something very comforting about that. So the small self, the oneness, the timelessness, the vastness. And then another aspect is sensations like chills or goosebumps, or your breath is taken away, or something happens to your body, you know?
Right.
And
Amazing.
even when somebody shares an awe story with you, you might feel that physical
Mm.
sensation,
Yes.
even from a story, let alone a live moment. But
Right.
it can it can happen. So your
Right.
body changes, you feel these chills, you feel this special feeling as your senses become more acute, right?
Mm.
And then another aspect is it's indescribable. Like you're not trying to describe it. You're just it might seem beyond words. And
It becomes
somehow your
part of
brain
you.
opens up to allow not having to explain it.
It
So
becomes
there's
part of
some of
your
the aspects.
it becomes part of your system from what you're saying. It sort
Mhm.
of like takes over your system in many ways.
It
You're
also
totally
grounds
immersed.
you into your
Mm.
body. You become
Right.
like if you're a trauma survivor or you're dealing with grief, we're caught up in our minds so much, but a moment of awe will put you back in your body. It
Mm.
connects you to something bigger than yourself and you feel grounded.
And
You
is that also because it really speaks to your five senses?
Yes, it
Hearing,
does.
smelling, tasting, touching, seeing. Yeah.
Very sensory.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
grounding, but it also opens you up to being part of something bigger. It's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah.
awe is really important for ourselves as humans. We need
Mm.
awe. We need reverence. We need wonder. Feeling small is good for us.
Mm. I have a question about this. What happens when you're tuned into this? All right. But then it may be 6 months, 8 months, a year before, or 2 years, whatever it is, where you don't have that experience. You have little ones,
Hmm?
and you forget the message, meaning that let's say things happen to you and you're being taken care of. That all moment shows you that I don't have to worry because there's something greater taking care of me and watching over me. But then in those other times, you still worry. You haven't bought it internally all the time.
That's right.
Can you speak to that?
So, as a human being, we can't have that level of awe constantly. Unfortunately, we're not built for that. Our default mode network comes back in most of the time. It's part of our survival. God bless our survival, but our survival mode is an important part of us. So these moments of awe and wonder take us out of that default mode network. It's like giving us a break, Patricia, but it's not the kind of thing we can perpetually live in. We're not built for that, but we are built to have moments and breaks from that default mode network. And if anything, if we build awe into our everyday lives, we get these nice little breaks that keep our mind open. Plus, did you know that just the state of being open, according to the Big Five Factor Psychology study of human traits, there are big five different traits. And being open, I'm just going to do a shout out for openness, Patricia. People who score higher in ability to be open to new experiences, open to learning, open with curiosity. Did you know just by being open and interested, like even in a conversation that I'm having with you, if I keep my mind open and listening and tuned into you, not just my stuff. So, an ability to have openness is the next best thing to having a big moment of awe and wonder. It keeps us prone to having awe and wonder, keeps
Mm.
us
Mm.
we're ready to snatch that moment when it happens, when we keep a state of openness. So I would say cultivating an open-minded openness about us where we can learn and go and wonder and go, wow, look what I learned
Mm.
just now. Do you see what I'm saying? A state of openness keeps us willing to invite those
Mhm.
moments of awe and wonder, even if we can't have the huge, uh, full state of awe and wonder constantly, but a mindful state of openness, being
Yeah.
willing. You know, the great poet Mary Oliver, I wrote about in my book because let me just give a shout out for that wonderful poet, Mary Oliver. She
Yeah, she's
actually had a
wonderful.
childhood with abuse and finally came out with it much later in life. It wasn't until her 70s that she was talking to people about that she had been a survivor of abuse. And I will let you know that her experiences with nature, even as a little girl, must have helped give her a sense of hope and meaning despite her abuse, which is why she was such a great poet when she wrote about nature. And she's one of the most awe-inspiring poets because she brings
Mhm.
us into the present moment to notice little things. And she had a great line in one of her great poems about being willing to be amazed. It's our willingness to be amazed by th little things and staying open to it. And that is so satisfying, especially as we age, to be willing to be amazed. That's a great line in one of her poems.
Mhm.
Um, and I did write about Mary Oliver because she was, as a trauma survivor, a perfect example of a person whose awe and wonder moments kept her, inspired her so much and made her
Mhm.
write such great poetry. So
Yeah,
she's a
which
good
is great.
example for aging well for me. She's
And
inspirational.
what we'll do is we're going to take a break, and when we come back, maybe you can read uh, part of her poems. Her poems are just beautiful and uh, so lyrical and almost musical, and they lilt, but they are beautiful. And then we'll talk about all moments as we get older. I'd like you to explore that in the other segments that we have today, and just how we can be more open to wonder and awe. And you talked about that. You talked about being open. We'll talk more about curiosity. So when we come back, we're going to talk to Val Walker more about her book, and her title really says it all: Healing Through Wonder, How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. Again, Val Walker is a contributing blogger for Psychology Today and Health Story Collaborative. She's the author of The Art of Comforting, a Nautilus Book Award Gold winner that was later recommended by the Boston Public Health Commission as a guide for families impacted by the Boston Marathon bombing. She's also the author of the book 400 Friends and No One to Call, and speaks nationwide on building community and support after loss and major life changes. She also has a Master of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling and works with support groups and people with illness, grief, and trauma for over 30 years. She's been doing this work. Stay tuned, folks. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamericamedia.com, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and we are back. We are talking to Val Walker, who is the healer. She is a healer, but she's the author of Healing Through Wonder: How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. And Val is a contributing blogger for Psychology Today and Health Story Collaborative. She's the author of The Art of Comforting, and she's written other books. She speaks around the country on grief and support and loss and comfort. Welcome back, Val.
Thank you.
So let's talk about awe as we get older, and we've lived a lot of our lives. How do we keep bringing that in?
It's probably easy to say the simple pleasures that we don't have to work hard to stop ourselves and something simple that takes our breath away. Look at the popularity of, for example,
Hmm.
watching birds at a bird feeder or moments with birds that we can build into our lives. It's one of the most highest people are saying now. Statistics show that bird watching and birding has become enormously popular
Hmm.
for especially a lot of seniors because it brings us together to share moments of awe. And we can have it by ourselves, but we can also share it with walks. So there we can build in these moments and then share it with each other. See, shared awe really helps the continuity of awe and wonder. And when you share your awe or your awe story with somebody about an encounter with an animal or a bird or a piece of music or a concert or something awesome that took your breath away, another person doing something, there are different ways we can share our stories with each other. But when we're doing something with an animal or a bird, it's built in, it's right there. We can share it and feel it. So these simple kinds of things, Patricia, are things we can build into our activities and our routines to actually bring awe into our lives
Hmm.
daily.
Yeah. Val, how have you worked with survivors or people in recent loss, in real grief? How do you help them to recognize these moments of awe?
I've worked as a facilitator of support groups and sometimes been a guest speaker for different support groups, probably over 2 decades with grief survivors. Many of the grief survivors I've worked with more recently in the last 5 years are survivors of those who lost their lives around substance use. And that's very often a stigmatized kind of grief where folks don't feel like they can share it with others. But there's something universal and that helps us break out of stigma and shame when we have experiences of awe and wonder that we can share, even in a support group.
Mm.
So, people who've suffered grief and loss, one person I profiled in my book who suffered the loss of her husband who died due to fentanyl use,
Mm.
deeply, deeply tragic story. And she herself had dealt with addiction all her life and had been in all kinds of recovery. Her name is Carol. And she shared with her support group stories of awe that gave her faith in that something greater than herself was helping her heal. And the story had to do with a song called Hold On for One More Day that kept reappearing in her life, almost with amazing timing and synchronicity around her hardest times. And one of the people she was going to for help for therapy held up a coffee cup one day that said, Hold on for one more day. And she connected with that therapist, and the therapist told her own personal story of losing someone. And so an awe experience can be shared. And when you're dealing with loss, you'll find another person dealing with loss who can just chime in and light up at the same kind of moment of
Uh,
miracle or awe, or look what happened. That song came to me and it changed my life. I was just listening to the radio. I was feeling so awful that day. That song came on. It turned my day around. So these wondrous experiences, when you share with another survivor who's dealing with grief and loss, it just breaks you through. Like I said, that default mode network that keeps you caught up in yourself, sharing even a story like that.
well, because it also has the group effect.
Yeah.
So you're sharing for you, but you're also affecting many other people. So there's a greater energy, if you will, a greater energy. One of the that's beautiful and so important for people to hear, Val. You talked before in our other segment about the poet Mary Oliver, who's amazing, and how she survived abuse but didn't talk about it till much later in life. Share a little bit about her work and
Well,
how it's in your book.
yes, she has a great quote about being, I'm a bride married to amazement. She has a great
Wow.
story about that. She has a great poem called The Ponds, where she talks about how moments that we can feel so much freedom just by being willing to be amazed. It's a beautiful poem about just being willing. Like, no matter how funky your brain is that day, just be willing. Let's just give it a shot. I'm going to be willing to be amazed today. She talks
Hmm.
about this moment with the pond, and many of her poems deal with simple, very everyday, just things we might overlook and just say, ah, that's just regular old,
Yeah,
whatever.
like looking at a flower,
That's
watching a
right.
flower grow, or a bee pollinating a flower. Yeah,
She just
simple.
opens our eyes to these little things that we take for granted
Yeah.
and restores our sense of awe. I think she does a great job of it. And for aging, that ability to restore ourselves, to bring it back, to bring a sense of wonder that we had as a child. Rachel
Hmm.
Carson writes
Yes,
beautifully about
yes.
take a child with you on a walk and see through the eyes of a child, and that'll do amazing things to keep your brain sharp and young as well. So, yeah, Rachel Carson writes a lot. She has a whole book called The Sense of Wonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have that book.
Oh, you
I have
do?
that. I do. And I have Mary Oliver's book. In fact, it's right over here. You were talking about it. I thought I should grab it
Yeah.
because there's so many nice things. But I think what all of this is speaking to is just open your eyes to the little things. And in today's world, and I think in general, we often aren't focused on that. We're focused on what happened, what's wrong, what isn't good. And we really, as you said, we need to feed ourselves with the positive and the beautiful and things that are wondrous. I mean, we really need to look at that.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Do you
And
think
we
that's
give our brains attention. Attention is an enormous thing that's been written about, our ability to have attention and how we give our mind what we give attention to and how that
mm,
affects us. That getting
mm,
off our screens and the doom scrolling, yes, we need to keep up with news, for example, but we need to be, I write about this in my book, quite deliberate, proactive about saying, I have got to get off this screen. I do not need but so much news. And that doesn't mean escapism, but it means balance. And I highly recommend looking at our doses of awe and wonder as resilience and resistance to the negative forces. That when you stop and smell that rose or see that cardinal or listen to that beautiful song or go to a concert and feel the chills of a wonderful group of people sharing beauty in a concert or go to an art exhibit. Did you know, Patricia, these are acts of resistance, conscious acts of saying, I'm going to give this to myself and share this with others and spread this in the world. It's an
Mm,
act that is, I think we need to look at awe and wonder as a proactive act of
mhm.
not only is it resilience building for ourselves, but it is also resistance from all the negative forces
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
cynicism and the
yeah,
things that want to destroy our spirits.
yeah. I think that's so true. Do you think some people are naturally more prone to wonder and curiosity? Do you think
There is
it's,
great,
or do you
I'm
think it's
sorry.
built in, or we learn it?
Well, neuroscience has shown that people who are more prone to being open-minded, openness to experience in the big five factor personality trait studies, people who tend to score higher in open to experience, or in other words, openness, are more likely to have awe and wonder moments. But the neuroscience also shows when you have awe and wonder moments, guess what it does? It helps train your brain for more openness.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it's a built-in way to instill openness in your
mhm,
brain. In fact,
mhm.
there's more studies with aging groups that it used to be thought that our curiosity decreased as we aged. Guess what?
It
They're finding
increases.
that if you are genuinely interested, fascinated, in awe of something, or just wowed about something, it naturally makes you more curious and more able to remember and learn from it. So
Yeah,
awe can sharpen us.
I have found that. I have
I'm
found
glad.
that.
Let's hear
Yeah.
about it.
Well, we're going to take a break and then I will share. But I have found that as I've gotten older, and of course, this is the work I do, interviewing people and finding things
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and being curious. But I'm finding I'm more curious than I was before. I'm asking more questions. I'm thinking about things more, and it's very true. And I think it's very helpful. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more to Val Walker about her very, very special book. And her book is Healing Through Wonder: How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. And we'll talk about that when we come back. It was recently published, and tell people how they can get it. Amazon?
A- Always Amazon, yes. Barnes and Noble, all the big stores, all the independent stores. But
Good.
also on my website, I created a special website in addition to my author website, valwalkerauthor.com. Of course, you got to have that because I have other books. But I was so in love with what I had written with my Healing Through Wonder book. And I have a guide in my book to wondrous movies, wonder-inducing movies, wonder-inducing videos, nature videos, all kinds of good stuff to arouse wonder in us. So I
And
created a website called healingthroughwonder.com too.
all right, when we come back, we're going to talk about those. I'm going to ask you, what do you suggest for books, movies, nature, and experience that create awe for us? You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamericamedia.com, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and we are back. We are talking to Val Walker, who's the author of Hurling Through Wonder, How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss. She's the author of other books. She's a contributing blogger for Psychology Today and Health Story Collaborative. She's the author of The Art of Comforting, a Nautilus Book Award Gold winner that was later recommended by the Boston Public Health Commission as a guide for families impacted by the Boston Marathon bombing. She's also the author of the book 400 Friends and No One to Call, and she speaks nationwide on building community and support after loss and major life changes. Her background is in rehabilitation counseling, grief support, and consulting. And she's been quoted in many magazines and papers. She has a Master's of Science degree in rehabilitation counseling. And so happy that you're with us today, Val. What I'm excited to talk about in this last segment of this interview is the resources you have to create wonder, books, movies, experiences, events. Go ahead. Love to hear some.
Well, I was an educator and also I used to run grief support groups and different kinds of groups. And there were shared experiences of awe and wonder that I learned from over the decades, the last, 25, 30 years. So I would be happy to share some things that can take our breath away. So, for example, some of the nature videos that we might watch that can be just awe-inducing, right?
Right.
The, metamorphosis of the, going into a butterfly, time-lapse photography kinds of videos.
Mm,
Yosemite HD is a great video. It's well known. Just stunning videos where you share with other people or just share with yourself. And it's great to collect videos and films in your own all library. You can create your own libraries with YouTube, your things that will give you if you like, a inspiration of awe and wonder. So let's talk about some movies. Life of Pi had huge
oh, yes.
expanses of ocean and very mystical moments in that movie. Uh, Many different kinds of movies that inspire awe and wonder. It can be a very personal thing, but Life of Pi, movies like Arrival, very fascinating and mysterious.
Mm,
Movies that like Interstellar. The music also from Interstellar is one of the best, most documented, awe-inducing types of music you might ever hear. Interstellar is quite stunning music for the soundtrack and the eclipse from Interstellar. Other movies that induce space, there's been some wonderful movies about space that, even going back to 2001, the Space Odyssey movie, and the music from that, is stunning. Even back then, how powerful that is, those images from 2001 and the music from 2001. Um, Also, movies that bring in the migration of birds. There's
mm,
some beautiful movies about that. And also poetry, like reading Mary Oliver and other poets that elicit awe and wonder. There are moments that give you chills and open you up to moments like that. Even the famous Wordsworth poem about, you know, opening up with the April daffodils. And they're great. They're great poets out there. They're great movies. There's great videos and books and videos by the neuroscientists who've studied awe and wonder have done some fascinating conversations about awe and wonder. So Dr. Kiltner, if you were to look into his videos where he's been interviewed, he's so inspirational about what we can do.
yeah.
So
So there's
just
there's
a
a lot.
few things. There's a big on my website, Healing Through Wonder website, and in the book, I have very detailed guides, even guides to awe and wonder around people who instill awe and wonder in us through acts of kindness or courage.
Mm.
Great biographies that inspire awe and wonder from people who've done amazing things.
Like Maya Angelou, who I was very honored to interview when she was alive, which is
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, she was. I interviewed her twice, and she, when that interview was over, my whole body shook. I mean, a very unique. She reminded me of a Mother Teresa, but there wasn't one angry. She was pure love, not one angry bone in her body, pure love. And she had a tough childhood, but talk about awe and wonder and beauty.
And her
She was
poetry
incredible.
elicits that too. Just want
Yeah,
to chime in. She has some
yeah,
great, she was in awe of the human spirit.
yes,
So she wrote poems of awe about humans and humanity, which is
yeah.
so inspiring these days.
Yeah, yeah, it was great. And really wonderful. So there's so much there. People like Mother Teresa, as you said, Nelson Mandela, some amazing people. So we have a couple minutes left. What would you like to leave our listeners with today, Val?
The biggest reason I wrote my book is that I wanted anybody who's been through grief or trauma to know that their sense of wonder is a source of strength, resilience, and hope. That we have tended in our society been biased to think that our moments of wonder and openness and awe aren't such a big deal. It's just kind of like when you're a kid. You have the sense of wonder, whatever. This book, as well as the neuroscience I bring in and other people's stories, is here to help us reclaim that ability to have wonder and awe. That sense of wonder we have gives us strength, and it gives us an ability to reset our whole mind, to tune into the day with a whole different outlook by just having that ability, like, and willingness, as Mary Oliver said, that willingness to stop what you're doing and have a moment with that cardinal who lands near you, or that music that comes on the radio and kind of stops you. It's like, wow, I haven't heard that in a long time. Is there a message here, That ability and willingness gives us strength, resilience, hope when we're going through a really
Mm,
hard time. But it also, I think, for these times that we're living in, where it's easy to feel cynical and giving up on humanity, that when we have these moments of awe and wonder, it just gives us a fresh pair of eyes and hope. So stay open to those and remember that awe and wonder gives you strength. It's not just an escape.
mm. Thank you so much for a very awe-inspiring interview, Val Walker. Really. And people can find your book on Amazon, any of the bookstores as well. And your website is valwalker.com.
ValWalkerAuthor.com.
Val
And the
Walker.
other is healingthroughwonder.com.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the program. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. All right, folks, stay on the line for a minute. That wraps up this edition of the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on VoiceAmericaMedia.com. If you'd like to find me and get a copy of my monthly newsletter where I outline all of these fabulous guests I have on every week, write to me, Patricia at patriciaraskin.com. I'll put you on my list. If you're interested in creating your own podcast series where you see that we share these amazing stories, if you'd like to put that together, I've interviewed over 6,000 people in my career. I'd love to help you. So contact me and we can help you put together a great podcast series. Remember, stay healthy, stay happy, get the support you need, and know you can make your dreams come true. Until next time, I'm Patricia Raskin. Bye for now.